In the bustling heart of New York City, a place where ambition thrives and desperation lingers in the shadows, one of the most daring bank heists in American history unfolded. The mastermind? Not a high-profile criminal mastermind or a tech-savvy hacker with a taste for digital espionage. No, this was something far more shocking. A homeless woman who had been overlooked by society but was destined to make history. For years she wandered unnoticed, a ghost in plain sight. She blended seamlessly into the city's chaotic rhythm, her presence unremarkable, her movements untraceable. But behind her quiet demeanor lay a sharp mind, carefully observing, waiting, and calculating. Her anonymity became her greatest weapon. What happened next was nothing short of extraordinary. Using a plan so intricate and audacious, she executed a heist that left both the FBI and the nation reeling. $100 million vanished in a single day, stolen not with brute force, but with meticulous precision and unparalleled cunning. The sheer scale of her operation baffled investigators, and her ability to disappear without a trace only added to the mystique. But who was this enigmatic figure? What life events shaped her into the genius capable of pulling off such a monumental crime? Her story is one of hardship, resilience, and a determination forged in the crucible of adversity. To understand her journey, we must look beyond the headlines and into the shadows where her story began. Stay tuned as we unravel the unbelievable true story of the homeless woman who defied all odds to become the mastermind behind a $100 million bank heist. What drove her to such extremes? And how did she manage to outwit the authorities for so long? The answers will shock you. On a frigid January morning in 1975, a baby girl was born in the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan. Her name was Grace McAlister, but the world would later know her by another name, one whispered in disbelief and awe. Ellen's early years were a story of survival, shaped by the harsh realities of poverty and neglect. By the time she was 10 years old, Ellen's life had already been marked by loss. Her father, a factory worker, died in a tragic industrial accident. Her mother, unable to cope, turned to alcohol, leaving Ellen to fend for herself in a world that offered little mercy. Teachers described her as quiet, intelligent, and distant, a child who seemed to carry the weight of the world on her small shoulders. In 1989, at the age of 14, Ellen ran away from home, disappearing into the streets of Detroit. She quickly learned that survival demanded ingenuity and resilience. Over the next few years, Ellen became adept at blending in, moving from shelter to shelter, never staying long enough to be noticed. This skill, becoming invisible, would later prove invaluable. By the mid-1990s, Ellen had made her way to New York City, drawn by the promise of opportunity, but finding only the cold reality of homelessness. During this time, she discovered the public libraries, where she spent countless hours reading. Books on psychology, finance, and even criminology became her silent mentors. In 1998, Ellen took a job as a janitor at a small savings bank in Brooklyn. It was here, surrounded by ledgers and vaults, that the first seeds of her plan began to take root. Watching the comings and goings of employees, the security protocols, and the predictable routines of the institution, she realized how vulnerable the system was to someone with patience and insight. Ellen's quiet observation transformed into active preparation. By 2001, she had begun crafting a meticulous plan. She studied banking regulations, learned about surveillance systems, and even spent time mastering sleight-of-hand techniques. Every step of her life appeared to be steering her toward one audacious goal: a crime that would shake the financial world to its core. By the time she turned 30 in 2005, Ellen had amassed a wealth of knowledge about how banks operated. Yet despite her brilliance, she remained homeless, drifting through shelters, her mind consumed by the intricate details of her plan. She was now ready to act, but she needed to wait for the perfect moment. As the calendar turned to 2008, a global financial crisis gripped the nation. Banks were stretched thin, their resources divided, and their focus fragmented. Ellen knew this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The groundwork was complete. All that remained was to execute her plan. Grace McAlister, the woman the world had overlooked, was about to become the architect of one of the most daring heists in history. But before the first move could be made, she needed to ensure that her escape plan was as flawless as her heist. What followed would baffle investigators and captivate the nation for years to come. As her plan moved toward its pivotal moment, Ellen's life of preparation was about to culminate in a single, breathtaking act. To understand how she pulled it off, we must examine the crime itself, the day the impossible became reality. It all went down on March 12, 2008, at 6:45 a.m. The heart of Manhattan stirred to life as office workers juggled coffee cups and briefcases while taxis honked impatiently in the endless rush-hour chaos. The Fifth Avenue Federal Bank opened its gleaming glass doors at exactly 7 a.m., welcoming a new day. To most, it was an ordinary Wednesday. But for Ellen Grace McAlister, it was the moment she had been preparing for her entire life. Dressed sharply in a tailored business suit purchased months earlier from a thrift store, Ellen stepped confidently through the bank's entrance, her plain black briefcase swinging at her side. She was the picture of professionalism. To the casual observer, she could have been a high-powered consultant or a corporate executive. No one gave her a second glance. Inside the bank, Ellen's calm and composed demeanor masked the nerves that simmered beneath the surface. The clock read 7:15 a.m. as she introduced herself to the staff as Elaine Matthews, a consultant for an out-of-state audit firm. Her counterfeit credentials and fabricated backstory were flawless, designed to withstand scrutiny. Every detail had been painstakingly rehearsed, down to her casual yet authoritative tone. Her first encounter was with the security guard at the entrance. Ellen greeted him with a polite smile and a firm handshake, immediately establishing control. With practiced ease, she raised concerns about a potential data breach. The guard, caught off guard by her confident manner, allowed her access to the restricted area behind the teller stations. Ellen's first hurdle had been cleared. By 8:30 a.m., Ellen was firmly embedded in the bank's morning operations. She moved discreetly, careful not to attract undue attention. Positioning herself near the server room, she waited for the perfect moment to act. When no one was looking, she slipped a small, specialized device from her briefcase and connected it to the bank's alarm system. Within minutes, the alarms were disabled, and the surveillance cameras went offline. The staff carried on with their routines, blissfully unaware that their systems had been compromised. Ellen's device worked like a charm, leaving no visible signs of tampering. It was a bold move, but Ellen had confidence in her meticulous planning. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, perfecting every step. At 9:15 a.m., Ellen entered the vault. Using a forged keycard and a stolen access code memorized years earlier during her time as a janitor, she gained entry without raising suspicion. Inside, millions of dollars were stacked neatly, waiting to be moved. It was a sight she had visualized many times before, but now, standing in the cool, sterile vault, it felt almost surreal. She moved with precision, loading bundles of $100 bills into custom bags designed to bypass weight sensors. Each motion was deliberate, every step choreographed. Ellen had spent countless nights practicing this in abandoned warehouses, ensuring that nothing was left to chance. By 10:05 a.m., Ellen had completed her task. As the vault door clicked shut behind her, she strolled calmly back into the lobby. Her face betrayed no hint of emotion as she thanked the security guard for his help. Carrying her now heavy briefcase, she exited the bank, blending seamlessly into the throng of pedestrians on the busy Manhattan street. Her escape plan unfolded as flawlessly as the heist itself. At 10:20 a.m., Ellen arrived at a parking garage several blocks away. She located an old delivery truck she had purchased under a false identity months earlier. Changing into a maintenance uniform and donning a baseball cap, she transformed her appearance in minutes. Ellen drove out of the city with the steady composure of someone running an errand, not someone fleeing the scene of $100 million theft. She had planned every detail, ensuring that no aspect of her appearance or behavior would attract attention. By 11 a.m., Ellen had reached an untraceable safe house in Queens, a modest apartment rented under another alias. Here, she carefully stored the stolen cash, ensuring that no traceable evidence remained. She burned the counterfeit credentials and discarded the business suit, erasing all links to her Elaine Matthews persona. Meanwhile, back at the bank, the staff began to realize something was wrong. Attempts to access the vault were met with silence. When security personnel finally breached the door at 12 p.m., they were met with an empty space where millions of dollars had once been. Panic spread like wildfire. By 12:15 p.m., the bank had contacted the FBI. The gravity of the crime became apparent almost immediately. Over $100 million had vanished. The only clue was a vague description of a polished consultant who had seemed completely ordinary. Agents arrived on the scene, scouring every inch of the bank for evidence. But Ellen had left no fingerprints, no DNA, and no digital trail. Her methods were so precise that the investigators were left grasping at straws. As the FBI worked tirelessly to piece together the details of the heist, Ellen remained calm in her safe house. She watched the news coverage with a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her plan had unfolded exactly as she had envisioned. Ellen's escape was far from over. The FBI's response would be swift and relentless, and she knew that any misstep could bring her down. But for now, she had succeeded in pulling off the largest bank heist in American history. The clock was ticking. With the full force of the FBI closing in, Ellen's next moves would be crucial. Her escape would have to be as flawless as her heist. What followed would captivate the nation and cement her legacy as the most elusive thief of her time. As news of the robbery began to trickle through the ranks of bank employees on March 12, 2008, at 11:30 a.m., Ellen Grace McAlister was already several steps ahead. She had parked the unassuming delivery truck in a secluded lot on the outskirts of Queens. Inside, Ellen set to work with the precision of someone who had rehearsed this moment countless times. Peeling off the maintenance uniform she had worn during her escape, Ellen revealed casual attire beneath: jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers. She placed the uniform, wig, and remaining disguise materials into a duffel bag and soaked them in bleach. She knew that even the smallest shred of DNA could unravel her plan, and Ellen didn't leave anything to chance. Using a burner phone purchased weeks earlier, Ellen made a single call at 12:45 p.m. Her contact, a shadowy figure known only as Gray, answered immediately. Gray had been a fixture in the homeless community Ellen had navigated for years, a trusted ally who didn't ask questions. Minutes later, a nondescript sedan pulled up to the lot. Ellen climbed in, greeted Gray with a terse nod, and settled into the passenger seat. They drove in silence toward a private airfield in rural New Jersey, a location Ellen had scouted meticulously during her planning phase. While the FBI scrambled to set up roadblocks and interview witnesses, Ellen arrived at the airfield around 3 p.m. The small, unregistered plane she had arranged weeks earlier was waiting on the tarmac. Ellen handed the pilot $10,000 in cash, her movements calm and deliberate. She boarded without hesitation, and moments later, the plane was airborne, heading north to Toronto. The flight was short, but Ellen used every second to her advantage. She mentally reviewed her next steps, ensuring that no detail had been overlooked. The key to her plan was constant adaptability, a skill honed during her years on the streets. At 5:30 p.m., Ellen landed in Toronto, blending seamlessly into the bustling crowd at the airport. She carried no flashy luggage, just a plain duffel bag that drew no attention. Her new identity, complete with forged documents, was ready for its debut. She boarded a westbound train to Vancouver, carefully paying for all expenses in cash to leave no digital trail. The next morning, March 13, 2008, Ellen crossed the U.S.-Canada border undetected. By the time the FBI pieced together that the thief might have fled the country, she was already hundreds of miles away. She rented a modest apartment in Vancouver under yet another alias, ensuring her profile remained low. From this base, Ellen began laundering the stolen money through an intricate web of shell companies she had set up years in advance. Her methods were as complex as they were brilliant. Ellen avoided large, conspicuous transactions, opting instead for smaller, calculated moves. Each dollar was carefully funneled into legitimate investments, further insulating her from discovery. Back in the United States on March 15, 2008, at 9 a.m., news of the heist dominated headlines. The FBI released a vague description of the suspect, describing a polished consultant type who had vanished without a trace. Ellen watched the coverage from her apartment with a grim smile. Aware of the public scrutiny, she altered her appearance once again. She cut her hair short and swapped her signature glasses for colored contact lenses. Her once professional appearance was replaced by an unremarkable look, a face no one would remember. Word reached Ellen on March 20, 2008 at 6 p.m., through her underground network, that the FBI had traced the unregistered plane to the New Jersey airfield. By the time agents arrived to investigate, the pilot had vanished, leaving behind a burned logbook. The delay was all part of Ellen's plan, giving her enough time to prepare for her next move. Ellen packed her belongings and left Vancouver, heading east. She knew that staying in one place for too long increased her chances of being caught. Constant motion was her greatest ally. By March 25, 2008, at 8:30 a.m., Ellen had settled in a quiet suburb of Calgary, renting a small home under a new alias. She maintained a low profile, blending into the fabric of the community with ease. While she appeared to live modestly, Ellen continued to quietly shift her stolen fortune into legitimate channels. Meanwhile, the FBI's frustration mounted. Despite their best efforts, Ellen's trail had gone cold. She had outmaneuvered them at every turn, leaving no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no concrete evidence to follow. But as flawless as her escape seemed, Ellen knew the net was tightening. The FBI's resources were vast, and it would take only a single mistake for her carefully constructed plan to unravel. On April 1, 2008, Ellen received word that the FBI had begun monitoring international banking activity in search of irregularities. She adjusted her laundering strategy, moving smaller amounts more frequently to avoid detection. Her adaptability was extraordinary, but she was also keenly aware of the stakes. Each new move increased the risk of exposure. Ellen's confidence remained unshaken, but deep down, she knew that the tiniest slip could bring her world crashing down. By April 10, 2008, the FBI issued an internal bulletin detailing Ellen's likely movements. They suspected she had fled to Canada, but her exact location remained a mystery. Agents combed through financial records and interviewed dozens of witnesses, but every lead seemed to hit a dead end. Ellen's escape had been a masterclass in misdirection, adaptability, and forethought. But as her story continued to unfold, one critical question remained. Could she keep running forever? The authorities were closing in. Ellen's seemingly perfect escape was about to face its greatest challenge. A single mistake that would lead to a dramatic and elaborate arrest, one that would leave the world speechless. On April 15, 2008, at 7 a.m., Ellen Grace McAlister sat in a nondescript motel room outside Calgary, the morning light filtering through thin curtains. She flipped through a newspaper as headlines continued to buzz about the Fifth Avenue Federal Bank heist. Despite the international attention her crime had garnered, Ellen remained calm. Her meticulous planning had left the FBI with little to follow. What she didn't realize, however, was that a single slip made days earlier had set her downfall into motion. Just 10 days earlier, on April 5th at 11:30 a.m., an international task force had intensified efforts to track Ellen. Investigators scoured flight manifests, security footage, and financial records, searching for any trace of the elusive thief. In a stroke of luck, a customs officer in Toronto recalled an interaction with a woman who seemed nervous but polished, matching Ellen's description. When train station surveillance footage confirmed she had traveled west, the hunt narrowed to Canada. By April 8, 3 p.m., the FBI had zeroed in on Western Canada, narrowing their focus to Calgary. This is where Ellen had unknowingly made her first mistake. She had rented a small apartment, paying in cash to maintain her anonymity. Her reclusive behavior and all-cash transactions raised suspicions with the property manager, who reported her to local authorities. The tip reached the FBI, who placed the building under quiet surveillance, waiting for Ellen to make her next move. For days, agents observed her comings and goings. On April 12th at 9 p.m., Ellen stepped out of her apartment dressed as a man, her wig and baggy clothes a clever attempt to disguise her identity. While her initial movements were convincing, her mannerisms, an almost unconscious gait, and the way she glanced over her shoulder betrayed her. The task force now had confirmation. They had found their mastermind. The FBI spent the next few days crafting an elaborate plan to capture Ellen without alarming her network or risking a confrontation. On April 15th at 9 a.m., agents disguised as delivery personnel arrived at her apartment. They knocked on her door, holding a package addressed to her alias. Ellen answered with her usual composure, but as the door opened, undercover operatives moved swiftly, subduing her before she could react. Despite the surprise, Ellen remained calm as they handcuffed her, offering no resistance. By 10:30 a.m., Ellen was transported to a secure facility in Calgary for interrogation. FBI Special Agent Laura Martinez, who had been instrumental in the investigation, was struck by Ellen's demeanor. She didn't look like a criminal, Martinez would later recall. She looked like someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. The news broke the following afternoon on April 16th at 2 p.m., sending shockwaves across the globe. Headlines like, "Mastermind of $100 million heist caught in Canada" and "Homeless woman behind largest bank robbery" dominated the front pages. The nation was captivated by the revelation that a homeless woman had orchestrated a crime so intricate and bold it rivaled Hollywood blockbusters. Authorities began the painstaking process of recovering the stolen money. By April 18th at 9 a.m., investigators had retrieved over $70 million from Ellen's apartment, and various safe deposit boxes registered under false names. However, they suspected that a significant portion of the remaining funds had been funneled into offshore accounts, well beyond their reach. Throughout intense questioning, Ellen maintained an air of quiet defiance. She refused to disclose the full scope of her operation, frustrating agents who were desperate to understand how she had pulled off such a sophisticated crime. Each unanswered question only added to her mystique. As she sat in her cell awaiting extradition to the United States, Ellen reflected on the years of planning that had led to this moment. Her arrest marked the culmination of one of the most exhaustive manhunts in FBI history. Yet even in custody, questions lingered. How had she managed to stay ahead of the world's most powerful law enforcement agencies for so long? By April 20th, the focus had shifted to preparing for Ellen's trial. Prosecutors and defense attorneys alike delved into the intricate details of her case. While her arrest had answered some questions, many others remained. How deep did her network go? And was she truly the sole architect of the heist, or were there others involved? Ellen's composure in the face of such scrutiny only added to the public's fascination. Each detail revealed about her life painted a picture of resilience and ingenuity. She had spent years as a ghost in plain sight, blending into the fabric of society while quietly plotting a crime that would leave an indelible mark on history. The trial promised to be as captivating as the heist itself, a spectacle that would draw millions of viewers and spark debates about morality, justice, and genius. Ellen Grace McAlister, a woman who had been invisible to the world for so long, was now the center of its attention. As the nation awaited her day in court, one thing was clear. The story of the homeless woman who outsmarted the system had only just begun. The federal courthouse in Manhattan came alive on June 1, 2008, at 9 a.m. Reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers filled the steps, their voices blending into a cacophony of excitement and anticipation. Inside, every seat in the courtroom was taken. Ellen Grace McAlister, the woman who had executed the most audacious bank heist in U.S. history, was finally facing justice. Dressed in simple prison attire, Ellen sat stoically at the defendant's table, her eyes scanning the room with an air of calm curiosity. Prosecutors wasted no time in painting Ellen as a calculated and cunning criminal. They presented an overwhelming array of evidence, including stacks of recovered cash, grainy surveillance footage from the Fifth Avenue Federal Bank, and the detailed plans discovered in her Calgary apartment. Each piece of evidence reinforced the idea that Ellen's crime had been as methodical as it was brazen. The prosecution emphasized her deep understanding of security systems, her manipulation of human behavior, and her flawless execution of the escape. By June 3, 2008 at 10:30 a.m., the defense began presenting their case. Ellen's attorneys argued that her actions were not born of greed, but of desperation and resilience. They painted a stark picture of systemic neglect, illustrating how years of homelessness and societal failure had left Ellen with few options. Her attorney, a passionate and eloquent speaker, captivated the courtroom. This was not about greed, he declared. It was about survival and reclaiming a sense of control in a life that had given her none. The words resonated, leaving an uneasy silence in their wake. The trial reached a dramatic peak on June 10, 2008, at 11:45 a.m., when Ellen herself took the stand. Calm and composed, she captivated the courtroom with her articulate testimony. For the first time, the public heard Ellen's side of the story in her own words. She admitted to the heist without hesitation, describing it not as a crime of opportunity, but as a personal challenge, a way to expose the vulnerabilities in a system she believed was built to oppress. It wasn't about the money, Ellen said, her voice steady. It was about proving that the system isn't as impenetrable as they want us to believe. Her testimony was both a confession and a condemnation. The gallery sat in stunned silence as her words hung in the air. Ellen's calm defiance and her pointed critique of societal structures divided opinion. Some saw her as a symbol of resistance, a voice for the marginalized. Others saw only a criminal who had justified her actions with a veneer of philosophy. For 3 weeks, jurors listened to testimony, reviewed evidence, and deliberated. On June 25, 2008, at 3 p.m., the verdict was finally read. Ellen was found guilty on multiple counts, including bank robbery, money laundering, and identity fraud. The judge acknowledged her intelligence and the meticulous planning of her crime, but emphasized the need for justice and deterrence. "Your actions, while extraordinary, have consequences," the judge stated firmly. Sentencing came swiftly. On June 30, 2008, at 10 a.m., Ellen was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The decision sparked immediate debate. While many praised the sentence as fair given the magnitude of her crime, others argued it was excessive, pointing to Ellen's nonviolent methods and her tragic background. The public was deeply divided. To some, she was a criminal genius who had used her brilliance for the wrong reasons. To others, she was a symbol of defiance, a personification of resilience against a broken system. By July 5, 2008, at 9 a.m., Ellen had begun her sentence at a maximum security federal prison. The transition from freedom to incarceration was stark, but Ellen adapted with her characteristic composure. Reports soon surfaced of her spending hours reading and writing, analyzing the legal system, and even helping fellow inmates with their cases. She became a quiet but respected presence within the prison walls. The trial marked the end of one chapter in Ellen's life, but her story was far from over. Outside the prison, her actions continued to ignite debates and inspire conversations about inequality, resilience, and the limits of the human spirit. Ellen had become a cultural figure, her crime and trial dissected in books, documentaries, and countless articles. Her legacy began to take shape, not just as a criminal mastermind, but as a woman who had challenged the system in a way no one else ever had. Over time, her story became a lens through which society examined its treatment of the marginalized and its fascination with genius, even when that genius took a criminal form. Ellen's name continued to evoke strong emotions, with some hailing her as a Robin Hood figure and others condemning her as a thief. Her actions forced the nation to grapple with difficult questions about morality, justice, and the societal structures that had shaped her life. Within the prison, Ellen quietly continued to make an impact. She used her intelligence and resourcefulness to advocate for prison reforms and to help inmates navigate the complex legal system. Her defiance had not waned, but it had taken on a new form, a determination to leave a lasting, positive mark even in the confines of her cell. Ellen's trial and sentencing were just the beginning of a legacy that would endure for years. Her story transcended the courtroom, becoming a symbol of resistance, resilience, and the enduring human spirit. As the world moved on, one thing was certain: Ellen Grace McAlister would never be forgotten. Ellen Grace McAlister's incarceration on July 5, 2008, marked the end of her audacious crime spree, but her story refused to fade into obscurity. The tale of a homeless woman who outsmarted one of the most secure financial institutions in the United States became the stuff of legend almost immediately. News outlets revisited the details of the heist, while audiences across the country debated whether Ellen was a villain or a genius. Documentaries, books, and countless articles dissected every facet of Ellen's life, crime, and trial, cementing her place in American true crime history. The public was captivated not just by the audacity of her actions, but by the questions her story raised about societal structures. Ellen's rise from invisibility to infamy touched on issues of poverty, opportunity, and justice, forcing a national reckoning with the very systems designed to protect the powerful. To some, Ellen was a modern-day Robin Hood, a brilliant underdog who exposed the vulnerabilities in a financial system believed to be impenetrable. To others, she was a criminal whose immense intellect could have been used for far nobler purposes. Either way, Ellen's actions and the life that led to them resonated deeply. Her story became a mirror reflecting the inequities of society and the resilience of the human spirit. By 2010, Ellen's story had become a cultural phenomenon. Writers and filmmakers explored her journey, delving into her years of homelessness, her meticulous planning of the heist, and her eventual capture. True crime enthusiasts debated the ethical implications of her actions, and public fascination with Ellen only grew. Inside prison, Ellen remained as enigmatic as ever. In her early years of incarceration, she largely kept to herself, observing her environment with the same quiet intelligence that had defined her life on the streets. But as time passed, reports began to surface of Ellen's growing influence among her fellow inmates. By 2015, after nearly a decade behind bars, Ellen had become a source of inspiration for many within the prison system. She began teaching financial literacy classes, helping inmates understand the basics of saving, budgeting, and investing, skills Ellen had honed while laundering millions of dollars. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. "She's not just a story of crime," one former inmate said. "She's a story of resilience." Ellen's influence extended beyond the prison walls. The heist had exposed critical vulnerabilities in the banking industry, prompting a wave of reforms. Security protocols were overhauled nationwide, with institutions investing millions in advanced technology and staff training to prevent similar breaches. Ellen had unwittingly become a catalyst for change, even as she remained confined behind bars. By 2020, Ellen's name was synonymous with the heist that had baffled authorities and captivated the public. Podcasts and YouTube channels dedicated to true crime often featured her story, drawing new audiences into the mystery of how a homeless woman had orchestrated one of the most daring thefts in history. As a new generation discovered her tale, the debate surrounding Ellen's actions reignited. Was she a victim of systemic failure, driven to crime by desperation? Or was she a calculated criminal who exploited her circumstances for personal gain? The nuances of her story kept her legacy alive, sparking endless discussions in classrooms, forums, and coffee shops across the country. By 2023, interest in Ellen had reached new heights. Dramatized films, documentaries, and in-depth investigative series kept her story in the spotlight, each retelling adding layers of complexity to her already intricate narrative. Audiences were drawn to her calculated brilliance and enigmatic personality, fascinated by the paradox of a woman who defied expectations at every turn. That same year, Ellen's legal team filed a petition for a sentence reduction. Citing her exemplary behavior and contributions to prison reform, they argued that her punishment no longer fit the crime. Public support for the petition was overwhelming, with many calling for leniency in light of Ellen's transformative impact. The petition reignited conversations about the justice system and the balance between punishment and rehabilitation. For some, Ellen's continued imprisonment was a necessary deterrent. For others, it was a reminder of the harshness of a system that often failed to account for the humanity of those it punished. Even as her legal fate hung in the balance, Ellen's legacy continued to grow. Her story extended far beyond the $100 million she had stolen. It became a lens through which society examined its treatment of the marginalized and its obsession with genius, even when that genius veered into criminality. Ellen was a paradox, a criminal who inspired, a thief who gave back, and an outcast who reshaped the very system that had once overlooked her. She had become a symbol of resilience and defiance, a figure who challenged societal norms and forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about the world they lived in. As the years passed, Ellen's influence remained palpable. She inspired countless individuals to question the structures that governed their lives and to seek change, whether through advocacy, reform, or personal growth. Her name evoked admiration, criticism, and awe in equal measure. By the late 2020s, Ellen's story was being taught in schools, not as a tale of crime, but as a case study in resilience, ethics, and the human condition. Her actions, while illegal, were analyzed through the lens of systemic failure, sparking important discussions about opportunity and justice. Within the prison system, Ellen's presence continued to be felt. She became a mentor to younger inmates, using her knowledge and experience to guide them toward a better future. Her contributions to prison reform earned her the respect of both inmates and officials, further solidifying her legacy as more than just a criminal. Ellen Grace McAlister's life, both inside and outside prison, became a testament to the complexities of human nature. She was neither wholly a villain nor entirely a hero. She was and remains a reflection of the world's contradictions, a symbol of both its flaws and its possibilities. Her story serves as a reminder that one person, no matter their circumstances, can leave an indelible mark on history. Ellen's name continues to provoke strong emotions, challenging perceptions, and inspiring debates. As time marches on, the tale of the homeless woman who outsmarted the system and stole $100 million remains one of the most compelling chapters in the true crime genre. Ellen Grace McAlister, whether seen as a hero, a villain, or something in between, will never be forgotten. If you found Ellen Grace McAlister's story as captivating as we did, there's so much more where that came from. Dive into the world of true crime, where the line between justice and morality blurs, and every tale leaves you questioning what you thought you knew. By subscribing to our channel, you'll gain access to exclusive deep dives, gripping mysteries, and stories of resilience that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Hit that subscribe button now, and don't forget to turn on notifications, so you'll never miss an episode. Your support helps us uncover and share the most compelling stories, from unsolved mysteries to the audacious acts of individuals like Ellen. Join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts who are just as passionate about these real-life tales as you are. Share this video with your friends, drop a comment to let us know your thoughts, and be part of the conversation. Together, we'll continue to explore the incredible stories that shape our world. Subscribe now and let's uncover the truth, one story at a time.